Have you ever found yourself overwhelmed by stress and wondered, why is it so hard to stay happy in life? Do you often feel like your happiness depends on things you can't control, like how people treat you or what happens around you? What if I told you there's a way to find true happiness, no matter what life throws at you? Imagine living a life where your peace and joy don't crumble under pressure. Sounds incredible, doesn't it? Let's start with a simple example. Think about a rainy day. Some people get upset because their plans are ruined, while others find joy in the sound of raindrops or the freshness in the air. The rain is the same, yet the experience is completely different. Why? Because happiness isn't about what happens to us. It's about how we respond to it. Welcome to Wisdom Woven, your go-to channel for practical insights to live a better, happier life. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our community. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% of you have subscribed. If you're enjoying this content, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps us bring you more life-changing wisdom. Now, let's dive deeper into today's topic. How can Buddhism help us stay happy in every situation? Buddhism, a philosophy that has guided millions for centuries, teaches us that happiness doesn't come from chasing pleasures or avoiding pain. Instead, it's about understanding life's truths and cultivating the right mindset. Many of us believe happiness will come when we achieve something, a promotion, a new car, or a perfect relationship. But Buddhism challenges this idea. It shows us that chasing after things only creates more craving and dissatisfaction. True happiness lies in shifting our focus inward, understanding the nature of our thoughts and feelings, and learning to let go of what we cannot control. Buddhism introduces concepts like mindfulness and compassion, which are simple yet profound tools to transform our daily lives. These practices help us pause, reflect, and act in ways that nurture inner peace instead of chaos. They're not just philosophical ideas, they're practical steps we can take every day. In this video, we'll explore how these timeless teachings can be applied to modern life, making it possible to remain calm, centered, and happy even when things don't go our way. Stay tuned, because what you'll learn here might just change the way you see the world and yourself forever. Understanding the nature of suffering, dukkha, life in its most honest form, is full of ups and downs. There are moments of joy, but also moments of hardship. Have you ever wondered why we experience so much pain, frustration, and discomfort? We live in a world where things don't always go as planned, and it often feels like suffering is unavoidable. But what if I told you that the suffering you feel is not a punishment, and it's not something unique to you? It's a natural part of life. In Buddhism, this concept of suffering is called dukkha. This term doesn't just refer to physical pain, but to any kind of dissatisfaction, discomfort, or unease we experience. Whether it's the discomfort of a difficult emotion or the frustration of not getting what we want. Dukkha reminds us that life is impermanent, and that's why suffering exists. We can never hold on to anything forever. Whether it's a pleasant moment or a cherished possession, it's all temporary. But here's the important thing to remember. Dukkha is not something to fear, and it's not something that should define us. It's simply a part of the human condition. We cannot avoid it entirely, but we can learn how to navigate it with wisdom and understanding. Once we truly understand the nature of suffering, we can start to move beyond it. This is one of the key teachings of Buddhism, the idea that suffering is not only inevitable, but also something that can lead to growth and insight. Many of us spend our lives trying to escape suffering. We try to avoid discomfort, pain, and disappointment at all costs. We may look for ways to numb our emotions, to distract ourselves from the harsh realities of life. But no matter how hard we try, these attempts are usually temporary solutions. They don't address the root cause of our suffering. According to Buddhism, this desire to escape suffering is itself a source of suffering. When we fight against the reality of life, we only deepen our frustration. But there's good news. Buddhism offers a different perspective on suffering. Instead of resisting it, we can learn to accept it. This doesn't mean we have to enjoy the pain or discomfort. It means we stop running from it and start facing it with an open heart. Once we stop trying to avoid suffering, we stop giving it power over us. We can begin to live more fully in the present moment, without being constantly anxious about what may or may not happen next. To better understand this, let's break down the idea of dukkha. The Buddha taught that there are three types of suffering we all experience. The suffering of pain, dukkha. This is the most obvious kind of suffering. The physical pain we experience, such as illness, injury, or loss. It's also emotional pain, such as sadness, grief, and heartbreak. This type of suffering is easy to recognize, but it is only one part of the bigger picture. The suffering of change, viparinama dukkha. Life is constantly changing. The moments of happiness and joy we experience are fleeting. Relationships, possessions, and even our own emotions don't stay the same forever. This kind of suffering arises when we cling to things, thinking they will remain unchanged. But because everything is impermanent, we eventually face disappointment when those things are lost or transformed. The suffering of conditioned existence, sankhara dukkha. This is the most subtle form of suffering, but it's also the most profound. It's the suffering that comes from the very nature of existence itself. We live with desires, attachments, and cravings that we can never fully satisfy. This constant cycle of wanting and not getting is a source of ongoing dissatisfaction, no matter how much we achieve. Now, understanding these types of suffering is the first step, but it's only the beginning. The Buddha didn't stop there. He also taught us that suffering has a cause. In fact, there are specific reasons we experience suffering, and these reasons are linked to our attachments and desires. We suffer because we want things to be different than they are, and when reality doesn't align with our expectations, we become frustrated. We suffer because we think we need certain things, money, status, love, to be happy, but these things are never guaranteed to bring lasting fulfillment. When we experience loss, we grieve not just because of what we've lost, but because we've clung to the belief that this thing or person should have stayed with us forever. We suffer when things don't go according to our plan because we are attached to the idea that life should unfold in a particular way. But here's where the Buddhist teachings offer a transformative shift. Suffering arises from our attachment to things, our cravings, and our resistance to change. When we stop clinging to the idea that life should always be easy, or that we should always get what we want, we begin to free ourselves from the cycle of dissatisfaction. This might sound easier said than done, but it's a gradual process. We don't have to let go of everything at once. Instead, Buddhism encourages us to start small. Begin by noticing the moments when we feel dissatisfied. When you feel frustration, ask yourself, what am I attached to right now? It could be an expectation, a desire for something to go your way, or an emotion that you're holding onto tightly. By recognizing our attachments, we start the process of detaching from them. Another key teaching of Buddhism is that suffering has an end. The Buddha didn't just explain why we suffer. He also pointed the way out. The end of suffering comes when we cease to crave, when we learn to accept the impermanence of life, and when we let go of the need to control everything around us. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent to life. It means we learn to embrace life as it is, without attaching ourselves to the idea that it should be something different. So, while suffering is inevitable, it doesn't have to define our experience of life. When we begin to understand the nature of suffering and recognize its roots in our attachments and cravings, we can begin to free ourselves from its hold. The more we accept the impermanence of life and the less we resist it, the more peace and happiness we find. This is a liberating realization. Suffering isn't something that happens to us. It's something we create through our attachments, desires, and resistance to change. And the good news is, once we see it for what it is, we can learn to live without it. In the next part, we'll explore how Buddhism teaches us to understand the path that leads to the end of suffering. The Four Noble Truths, a pathway to contentment. Let's begin with one of the most profound and life-changing teachings of Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths. These four truths provide a roadmap to understanding not just what happiness is, but also how to achieve it. In our busy lives, it's easy to get lost in the noise of distractions and desires, but when we pause and reflect on these four simple truths, we gain clarity. It's like a clear sky after a storm. Everything becomes easier to see. 1. The truth of suffering, dukkha. The first truth might sound a little harsh at first. Suffering is an inevitable part of life. But wait, this doesn't mean that life is only full of pain and hardship. What it means is that suffering exists in different forms, and it's something we all experience. Whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, or the discomfort of things not going as we planned, it's part of the human condition. Dukkha, the word for suffering in Buddhism, refers to the feeling that life is never completely fulfilling, no matter what we get. Even moments of joy eventually pass, leaving us searching for the next source of happiness. This suffering doesn't always look like big problems. It can appear in small moments too. Ever had a perfect day that suddenly became frustrating because something didn't go the way you expected? That moment of discomfort, no matter how small, is a form of dukkha. It's the gap between our desires and reality, and Buddhism teaches us to understand it instead of trying to escape it. Recognizing suffering for what it is allows us to stop pretending that life should always be perfect. But here's the key. Understanding suffering doesn't make life hopeless. It's the beginning of true freedom. Once we accept that pain and discomfort are natural, we can approach them with mindfulness and compassion, turning even the most difficult moments into opportunities for growth. 2. The truth of the cause of suffering. Now that we know suffering is a part of life, the next step is to understand where it comes from. The second noble truth teaches us that the cause of suffering is craving and attachment. We tend to crave things, experiences, or people, thinking that once we get them, we'll feel complete. But the reality is, the more we chase after these things, the more we feel unsatisfied. This craving keeps us stuck in a cycle of seeking something more, something better, something different, and as soon as we get what we want, we're already looking for the next thing. This craving is like a fire that never stops needing fuel. We're constantly adding more and more to try to satisfy it, but it's never enough. Whether it's material possessions, a perfect relationship, success, or status, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that these things will bring us lasting happiness. But Buddhism teaches us that the desire itself is the source of suffering. For example, think about how we react when things don't go as planned. Maybe you've planned for a promotion, or you're waiting for something important to happen. When it doesn't, frustration sets in. This frustration is rooted in attachment, the belief that our happiness depends on these things working out. The truth is, when we attach too strongly to any desire, we set ourselves up for disappointment. However, understanding this truth gives us the power to stop chasing after fleeting things. Instead, we learn to shift our attention from craving to acceptance and contentment. By letting go of these attachments, we reduce the suffering that comes from constantly needing more. 3. The truth of the end of suffering. Now, the third noble truth is the most hopeful and inspiring one. It's possible to end suffering. In fact, once we understand the causes of suffering, we realize that we can free ourselves from its grip. Buddhism teaches us that freedom from suffering is possible, and it begins when we let go of craving, attachment, and the mistaken belief that happiness depends on external circumstances. The end of suffering is not about escaping life's difficulties, but about changing our relationship with them. We don't have to live in constant desire for something more, and we don't have to resist life's challenges. Instead, we can approach life with a calm and open mind, knowing that peace comes from within, not from outside. Imagine a river. When we stand in the middle of it, struggling against the current, we feel overwhelmed and exhausted. But when we let the river flow naturally, we realize that we can float along with the current, effortlessly moving forward. The same is true in life. When we stop resisting and stop trying to control everything, we can move through life with ease. Buddhism teaches us that the end of suffering comes through inner transformation. When we stop clinging to desires, when we let go of attachments, and when we accept the impermanent nature of life, we experience peace. This peace isn't the absence of challenges, but the ability to remain undisturbed by them. 4. The truth of the path to the end of suffering. Finally, the fourth noble truth offers us a way out, a path to the end of suffering. This path is not some distant goal or secret method. It's practical and available to us right now. The Eightfold Path is the key, and it guides us toward living with wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. The Eightfold Path is made up of 8 practices, but they can be grouped into 3 main areas: wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. By practicing these in our daily lives, we begin to transform our minds and hearts, gradually reducing suffering and increasing happiness. Right view. understanding the world as it truly is, seeing life through the lens of impermanence, suffering, and interconnectedness. Right intention, cultivating good intentions, free from hatred, greed, and delusion. Right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, and avoiding harmful language. Right action, acting in ways that promote kindness, peace, and harmony. Right livelihood, earning a living in a way that is honest and does not harm others. Right effort, cultivating positive states of mind and letting go of negative ones. Right mindfulness, paying attention to the present moment with awareness and without judgment. Right concentration, practicing meditation to develop focus and clarity. This path is not about perfection. It's about gradual improvement. As we practice these principles, we become more aware of our thoughts and actions, less driven by craving, and more at peace with the world around us. It's a journey, and the more we walk this path, the more we find happiness, not in external circumstances, but in the way we relate to those circumstances, bringing it all together. So, what do these Four Noble Truths mean for us in our daily lives? They remind us that suffering is not something to fear or avoid. Instead, it's something we can understand, accept, and transform. By letting go of our attachments and cravings, we free ourselves from the cycle of endless wanting and frustration, and by following the Eightfold Path, we create a life that's grounded in wisdom, kindness, and peace. The Four Noble Truths are not just abstract ideas, they're tools for living a better life. They show us how to navigate the ups and downs of life with grace, how to turn every challenge into an opportunity for growth, and how to find lasting happiness, no matter what happens around us. As we move forward, remember that the journey toward contentment is not about avoiding difficulty, but about how we meet it. Every day, with each choice we make, we have the chance to apply these teachings, to embrace life as it is, and to find happiness that doesn't depend on the ever-changing world around us. The Four Noble Truths are a profound invitation to look within, to understand the true nature of our desires, and to walk a path that leads us to lasting peace. The Eightfold Path, a guide to inner peace. The Eightfold Path is one of the most important teachings of Buddhism. It's like a guide or a map that shows us the way to live a life filled with peace, wisdom, and compassion. It's not just a list of rules. It's a practical way of living that helps us stay calm, focused, and happy no matter what challenges come our way. Imagine walking along a path, and every step you take is one that brings you closer to inner peace and happiness. This is what the Eightfold Path offers, a clear route to living a fulfilling and meaningful life. The Eightfold Path is divided into 8 parts, and each part is designed to help us improve our way of thinking, speaking, acting, and living. These 8 steps can guide us to make better decisions, understand ourselves and others more deeply, and find peace in every situation. Let's explore each part of the Eightfold Path and see how we can apply them to our daily lives. 1. Right understanding, samadhi. The first step is about understanding the truth of life. It's about realizing that life is full of challenges and changes, and we can't control everything. When we understand that suffering is a natural part of life, we stop expecting things to always go perfectly. Instead, we accept life as it is, with all its ups and downs. Right understanding helps us see things clearly and helps us avoid being caught up in confusion, frustration, or unrealistic expectations. It's about seeing life as it really is, not how we wish it to be. Imagine if every time something went wrong in your life, you expected it to happen. How much less stress would you feel? Right understanding helps us change our mindset so that we can face difficulties with a calm and accepting attitude. We begin to see challenges as opportunities for growth, not as threats to our happiness. 2. Right thought, samma. The second step focuses on our thoughts. Our thoughts shape our emotions and actions, so it's important to make sure they are positive and peaceful. Right thought encourages us to think with kindness, compassion, and wisdom. It teaches us to let go of harmful thoughts like anger, jealousy, or selfishness. Instead of focusing on negative thoughts or judgments, we train our minds to think in ways that promote harmony and peace. A simple way to practice right thought is to pay attention to what we're thinking throughout the day. Are our thoughts filled with negativity? Are we holding on to grudges or resentments? If so, it's time to let go and replace those thoughts with kindness and understanding. Right thought encourages us to be aware of our mental habits and change them when they are harmful. 3. Right speech, samavaka. Our words have power. The things we say can either build bridges or create walls between us and others. Right speech teaches us to speak truthfully, kindly, and wisely. It reminds us not to gossip, lie, or speak with anger. Instead, we should aim to use our words to bring peace and understanding. Think about the last time you said something unkind or hurtful. How did it affect the situation? Did it make things better or worse? Right speech asks us to think before we speak. If our words can't help, then it's better to remain silent. Speaking with care and compassion helps build better relationships and creates a more peaceful world. 4. Right action, samakamanta. Right action is about living in a way that is ethical and compassionate. It encourages us to act with kindness, honesty, and respect for others. This means we avoid actions that harm others, like stealing, lying, or being cruel. Instead, we focus on actions that promote the well-being of ourselves and those around us. In our daily lives, right action could look like helping someone in need, treating people with respect, and making choices that align with our values. It's about making sure our actions reflect the type of person we want to be. Someone who contributes to the well-being of others and the world. 5. Right livelihood, samajiva. Right livelihood teaches us that the way we make a living should not harm others or the world. It encourages us to choose work that is ethical and beneficial, not harmful. For example, jobs that involve lying, cheating, or hurting others are not aligned with right livelihood. Instead, we should aim for work that is honest, meaningful, and helps others in some way. If you're thinking about a career or job, ask yourself, does this job cause harm in any way? Is there a way I can do my work in a way that benefits others? Right livelihood reminds us that our work should contribute to our growth as a person and to the well-being of the world around us. 6. Right effort, samavayama. Right effort is about putting in the effort to cultivate good qualities and let go of harmful ones. It's not about pushing ourselves too hard, but rather making consistent effort to improve ourselves over time. This includes cultivating positive qualities like patience, kindness, and wisdom, while working to reduce negative qualities like anger, greed, and ignorance. The key to right effort is balance. It's about making steady progress, step by step, rather than expecting instant results. It reminds us that change doesn't happen overnight, but with small, consistent efforts, we can transform our minds and lives. 7. Right mindfulness, samasati. Mindfulness is about being present in the moment and aware of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Right mindfulness teaches us to be fully present in everything we do, whether it's eating, walking, or having a conversation. It's about paying attention to the details of our experience without judgment. When we practice right mindfulness, we start to notice things we might otherwise overlook. The way our body feels, the emotions that come up, and the thoughts that pass through our minds. This awareness helps us make better choices and respond more skillfully to the challenges we face. 8. Right concentration, samasamadhi. The final step of the Eightfold Path is right concentration. This is the practice of focusing the mind with clarity and calmness. Right concentration helps us develop deep mental focus, which is essential for meditation and mindfulness. When our minds are scattered and unfocused, it's difficult to experience peace. But when we practice concentration, we can achieve a sense of stillness and clarity. Right concentration is about developing the ability to focus on one thing at a time, whether it's our breath, a thought, or an action. As we develop this skill, we become less distracted by the chaos around us and more attuned to our inner peace. Applying the Eightfold Path in our lives. The Eightfold Path is not something we achieve once and for all. It's a lifelong practice. It's about making small changes in our thoughts, words, actions, and choices every day. As we practice each of these steps, we begin to live a life that is more peaceful, more compassionate, and more fulfilling. It's important to remember that no one is perfect. We all make mistakes, and that's okay. The key is to keep trying, to keep learning, and to keep moving forward on the path. With time and effort, the Eightfold Path can help us live a life that is filled with inner peace and happiness, no matter what challenges we face. As you move through each day, think about how you can apply these 8 steps in your own life. Start with one or two of them, and gradually incorporate more as you go. Each step is a tool that can help you find peace, wisdom, and compassion in every moment. The Eightfold Path isn't just for monks or spiritual seekers. It's a path for everyone who wants to live a life of purpose, joy, and fulfillment. Impermanence, anicca, accepting life's transience. Everything changes. Life is a constant flow, a river that never stops moving. The one thing you can count on in this world is that nothing stays the same. Today, we live in a world where we're constantly chasing after things that we believe will bring us lasting happiness, wealth, success, fame, relationships. But what if all of this is fleeting? What if what we think will make us happy is just another wave that will soon crash onto the shore and disappear? This brings us to a key teaching in Buddhism, impermanence or anicca. This word might sound complicated, but its meaning is simple. It's the understanding that everything in life, including ourselves, is constantly changing. Our bodies, our emotions, the world around us. Nothing stays the same. The more we cling to these things, hoping they will last forever, the more we set ourselves up for disappointment. In our everyday lives, we experience impermanence all the time. Think about how your mood shifts during the day. One moment you might feel happy, and in the next, something happens and you feel upset or anxious. Or perhaps you've had a day that felt incredibly long, only for it to end in what seems like a blink of an eye. This is impermanence in action. Our feelings, thoughts, and experiences are never static. They rise, they fall, and they change. The same happens in our relationships and the world around us. Things come into our lives, they bring us joy, and then they go. We might get a new job or a new car, only for the excitement to wear off in time. We might meet new people, make new friends, but eventually, everyone moves on, and things change. It's a cycle that repeats itself over and over again, and it's the nature of life. But here's the thing. Impermanence is not something to fear. In fact, it's something to embrace. Understanding that nothing is permanent helps us let go of our attachment to things. It reminds us not to get too caught up in the highs or the lows, because they are temporary. Whether you're on top of the world or feeling down, you know it won't last forever. This awareness brings peace. Let's think about the seasons. The warmth of summer is followed by the chill of winter, but even winter eventually gives way to spring. Each season has its beauty, and each one teaches us that change is not the enemy. It's part of the natural rhythm of life. By accepting that nothing lasts forever, we can appreciate the present moment for what it is, without worrying about when it will end. In Buddhism, we are taught to see impermanence as an opportunity to grow. Instead of fearing change or resisting it, we can learn to flow with it. When we cling to things, we create suffering for ourselves. This attachment can take many forms, whether it's to material things, people, or even to specific outcomes we desire. But when we understand that everything is temporary, we can learn to let go of our expectations and simply experience life as it comes. Imagine you're sitting by a river, watching the water flow. The water doesn't cling to the rocks, the trees, or the land it passes by. It simply flows, moving with the current, accepting that it will never be the same again. The water moves forward, and the river keeps going, not holding on to anything from the past. It's free because it understands that each moment is new and precious. The same can be true for us. We can learn to live with less attachment, less fear, and more openness. By understanding that everything will change, we stop trying to control everything. We can stop worrying about what might happen or regretting what has already passed. We free ourselves from the burden of holding on to things that are not meant to last. Think about your own life. How many times have you tried to hold on to something, whether it was a person, an event, or a feeling, only to feel disappointed when it slipped away? The more tightly we grasp, the more painful it becomes when things change. But when we accept that nothing lasts forever, we can experience life without that constant fear of loss. We can enjoy the present moment for what it is, knowing it's fleeting, and yet precious. Now, how do we apply this to our daily lives? One way is to practice mindfulness. When we are mindful, we are fully present in the moment. We observe without judgment, without attachment. We feel the joy of the present without worrying about the future or clinging to the past. By training our minds to be more mindful, we can slowly let go of the need to control everything and instead learn to accept the flow of life. Another practice is gratitude. When we recognize that everything is temporary, we can be grateful for the moments we have. The people we meet, the experiences we enjoy, even the challenges we face. All of these are fleeting, and that makes them more precious. Instead of wishing for things to stay the same, we can be thankful for what is here right now. Buddhism teaches that by embracing impermanence, we find freedom. We stop being slaves to our desires and fears. We stop trying to make life fit into our plans and expectations. Instead, we learn to flow with it, to embrace each moment as it comes, and to let go when the time is right. The concept of impermanence isn't just about accepting that things change. It's about understanding that change itself is natural. It's the way the universe works. If everything stayed the same, nothing would grow, nothing would evolve. We would be stuck, stagnant, and unchanging. But because everything is in constant flux, we have the opportunity to grow, to transform, and to find joy in each new moment. In the end, the more we embrace impermanence, the more we free ourselves from the fear of loss. We begin to understand that every moment, whether happy or sad, exciting or mundane, is a gift. And just as we don't hold on to the joy of a beautiful sunset forever, we also don't have to hold on to our pain or sadness. All things pass. Even the hardest times will eventually give way to something new. So, when you're feeling stuck, or when things aren't going the way you want, remind yourself, this too shall pass. Like everything in life, this moment will change, and so will you. The key is to live with acceptance and grace, knowing that life's fleeting nature is not something to fear, but something to embrace. By accepting the impermanence of life, we let go of our attachments and open ourselves to a deeper, more lasting happiness, one that doesn't depend on the circumstances around us, but on our ability to be present with the moment, no matter how it unfolds. Mindfulness, study cultivating present moment awareness. Let's talk about something that can truly transform your life if you understand it deeply: mindfulness. In Buddhism, mindfulness is known as sati, and it is one of the most powerful tools we have to stay grounded in the present moment. But what exactly is mindfulness? In its simplest form, mindfulness is the art of paying attention to what's happening right now, in this very moment, without judgment or distraction. We live in a world that is always pulling us in different directions. Our phones beep, social media calls us, our to-do lists grow longer, and there's always something to worry about: our future, our past, what others think of us, and so on. In all this noise, it's easy to forget the present moment. But the truth is, the only time we truly have is the present. The past is gone, and the future is uncertain. What we do right now is what shapes our happiness and well-being. Imagine this. You're sitting in a park, and the wind is blowing gently through the trees. You notice the soft rustling of the leaves, the warmth of the sun on your skin, and the birds singing in the distance. But then, suddenly, your mind starts to wander. You think about an argument you had with a friend yesterday, or worry about a task at work tomorrow. Before you know it, you've lost the peacefulness of the moment, all because your mind has drifted. This happens to everyone. Our minds are naturally busy, constantly moving between the past and the future. However, mindfulness helps us train our minds to stay focused on the present moment, to be aware of what's happening right here and now. When we practice mindfulness, we stop running away from the present. Instead, we embrace it fully, with all its sensations, thoughts, and feelings. And this is where the magic happens. Why is mindfulness so important? It's because our thoughts shape our experiences. If we're constantly lost in thoughts about the past or future, we miss out on the beauty of the present. By being mindful, we create space to experience life more fully and with greater clarity. It allows us to respond to situations with calmness instead of reacting out of stress or anxiety. In the rush of life, mindfulness helps us slow down and notice what's actually happening, rather than getting caught up in our worries or distractions. Let's take an everyday example. You're eating your breakfast. Most of us eat while doing something else, scrolling through our phones, watching TV, or even thinking about what we need to do later in the day. We're physically eating, but mentally, we're somewhere else. Now, imagine eating with full attention, paying close attention to the taste of the food, the texture, the temperature, and even the act of chewing. You're not just eating, you're fully experiencing it. This simple act, done with mindfulness, brings you closer to the present moment and adds richness to your experience. It might sound simple, but practicing mindfulness in everyday activities like eating, walking, or even washing dishes can have a profound impact. You start to notice things you didn't before. You begin to see the world with fresh eyes, appreciating the little moments that often go unnoticed. But how do we practice mindfulness? The first step is to pay attention to the world around us, to our thoughts, and to our bodies. One way to start is through focused breathing. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and take a deep breath in. Feel the air entering your body and then slowly exhale, letting go of any tension. Focus only on your breath, the rise and fall of your chest, and the sensation of air moving in and out. Whenever your mind starts to wander, gently bring it back to your breath. This simple practice helps train your mind to focus on the present. Another way to practice mindfulness is through mindful listening. The next time you're having a conversation, really listen to the other person. Don't think about what you're going to say next. Don't let your mind wander to other things. Just listen, fully and deeply, to their words, their tone, and their emotions. By doing this, you not only strengthen your connection with the other person, but you also become more aware of your own thoughts and reactions. Mindfulness also teaches us to be kind to ourselves. When we make mistakes or feel stressed, it's easy to get caught up in self-criticism. But mindfulness reminds us to observe our thoughts without judgment. Instead of criticizing yourself for feeling anxious or upset, simply notice those feelings, accept them, and let them pass. This non-judgmental awareness helps us create space between our thoughts and our reactions. It allows us to make better choices, respond more thoughtfully, and ultimately be kinder to ourselves. The power of mindfulness lies in its simplicity. It's not about doing anything special or extraordinary. It's about being fully present in whatever you are doing, whether it's eating, working, or even just breathing. When we practice mindfulness, we realize that we don't have to chase happiness or peace. They're already here, in the present moment, waiting for us to notice them. In Buddhism, mindfulness is often paired with another important practice, meditation. Meditation is a tool that helps us strengthen our mindfulness and deepen our awareness. When we meditate, we sit quietly, focus on our breath, and observe our thoughts without getting attached to them. Over time, meditation helps us become more aware of the constant flow of thoughts in our minds. It teaches us that we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness behind them. Meditation, like mindfulness, doesn't require any special skills. It's simply about sitting with yourself, being aware of what's happening in your mind, and learning to let go of distractions. In fact, the more we meditate, the easier it becomes to practice mindfulness in everyday life. We start to carry that calm, present awareness with us wherever we go. One of the most beautiful things about mindfulness is that it's always available to us. We don't need to wait for the perfect moment or the right circumstances. Whether we're sitting in silence or walking through a crowded street, we can always choose to be mindful of the present. And when we make this choice, we begin to experience life in a more peaceful, joyful way. Mindfulness is not just about feeling good in the moment. It's about creating a deeper connection with ourselves and the world around us. It's about seeing things clearly, without the filter of our thoughts and judgments. And it's about finding peace, not by avoiding life's challenges, but by facing them with full awareness. So, the next time you're feeling overwhelmed or distracted, take a moment to pause and breathe. Bring your attention back to the present. Notice what's happening around you, within you, and embrace the moment as it is. Because the more you practice mindfulness, the more you'll realize that happiness isn't something you find in the future. It's something you can experience right now, in the present moment. Mindfulness doesn't promise that life will always be easy, but it does offer us a way to live with more peace, clarity, and happiness, no matter what challenges arise. It's a practice, a way of being, that can bring us closer to true contentment, one mindful moment at a time. Compassion and loving kindness, meta the key to joy. In our search for happiness, we often overlook one of the most powerful sources of joy that's available to us, compassion. What if I told you that the secret to a more peaceful, joyful life lies in the way we treat others and ourselves? Compassion, or metta in Buddhism, is not just about feeling sorry for someone or offering pity. It's about recognizing the shared humanity in all beings, understanding their struggles, and wishing them well. When we practice compassion, we open our hearts to others, and in return, we find ourselves growing happier. Imagine you are walking down the street and see someone who looks upset. Maybe they're sitting alone, or their body language is closed off. You might be tempted to look away, mind your business, or even judge them without really knowing their story. But what if, instead of avoiding them, you decided to offer a simple act of kindness? Maybe it's just a smile, a kind word, or a gesture of support. That one small act could make all the difference, not just for them, but for you as well. In Buddhism, compassion is one of the core qualities that leads to true happiness. It's not just a fleeting emotion. It's a mindset, a practice. When we cultivate compassion, we stop focusing only on our own needs and begin to see the suffering of others. We recognize that everyone is going through something, even if we can't see it on the surface. And in that recognition, we find a deeper connection to the world around us. This connection is what brings us peace. But why does this matter for our own happiness? You might think, I have my own problems. Why should I care about others? The truth is, when we show kindness to others, we also help ourselves. Studies have shown that acts of kindness release feel-good hormones in our brain, like oxytocin, which not only strengthens our connections with others, but also improves our mood. The more we give, the more we receive, not in material things, but in peace and joy. Compassion is closely linked to empathy, the ability to feel and understand the emotions of others. It's easy to get caught up in our own world, focusing on our own struggles. But when we open ourselves up to the experiences of others, we create a more compassionate and connected world. The simple act of listening to someone, really listening, can be one of the most compassionate things we do. Often, we don't need to offer solutions or advice. What people need most is to feel heard, to feel understood. And when we offer that space for others, we also create that space for ourselves to heal and grow. But let's take this one step further. Compassion is not just about extending kindness to others. It's also about being kind to ourselves. Often, we are our own worst critics. We judge ourselves for our mistakes, hold on to guilt or shame, and punish ourselves for not being perfect. But true compassion means accepting ourselves as we are, flaws and all. It means recognizing that we, too, are worthy of love and care. In Buddhism, there's a concept called self-compassion, which teaches us to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a close friend. Instead of beating ourselves up when we make a mistake, we can gently remind ourselves that we are only human, that we are learning, and that it's okay to be imperfect. Imagine for a moment how different your life would be if you treated yourself with the same love and patience that you offer to others. What if, instead of focusing on your shortcomings, you focused on your strengths? What if, instead of criticizing yourself for mistakes, you saw them as opportunities to learn and grow? This shift in perspective can transform the way we experience the world. When we embrace self-compassion, we begin to see ourselves as worthy of happiness and peace, and that mindset allows us to find joy even in difficult times. This is where the practice of metta comes in. Metta, often translated as loving kindness, is an unconditional love that we extend to all beings, including ourselves. It's not based on anything that can be earned or lost. It's simply a state of being that we cultivate in our hearts. The practice of metta involves repeating simple phrases like, "May you be happy," "May you be peaceful," "May you be safe." At first, we say these words for others, but eventually, we begin to direct them towards ourselves as well. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. Over time, this practice helps us develop a mindset of unconditional love, not only for others but for ourselves too. One powerful way to cultivate compassion is through meditation. Loving-kindness meditation is a practice where we focus on sending positive thoughts and feelings to ourselves and to others. We start by focusing on someone we love, like a close friend or family member, and we silently wish them well. Then, we expand this circle of compassion outward, wishing well to neutral people, people we may have conflicts with, and eventually, all beings in the world. This practice opens our hearts and reminds us that compassion has no boundaries. It's not limited to those who are kind to us or who look like us. It extends to everyone, everywhere. As we continue to practice compassion, we begin to notice a shift in the way we see the world. We start to realize that we don't have to wait for others to show kindness to us first. We can choose to be the source of love and positivity in our own lives. The more we practice compassion, the more we start to feel it in our everyday interactions. We might find ourselves being kinder to strangers, more patient with our loved ones, and more forgiving of ourselves. And in turn, these small acts of kindness create a ripple effect. When we spread love and compassion, it spreads to others, creating a more joyful and peaceful world. But remember, the key to cultivating compassion is consistency. It's easy to feel kind and loving when things are going well, but true compassion is tested when we face challenges or difficult people. It's in these moments, when we feel upset or hurt, that we need to remember the power of compassion. When we face negativity, we have the choice to respond with kindness rather than defensiveness. This doesn't mean we allow others to treat us badly. It simply means that we choose to respond from a place of love, not anger or resentment. In conclusion, compassion is not just a feeling, it's a practice, a way of life. When we practice compassion, we are not only helping others, but we are also healing ourselves. By extending love and understanding to all beings, including ourselves, we open the door to lasting joy and peace. So, the next time you feel upset or frustrated, remember the power of compassion. It's not just about changing how we treat others, it's about changing the way we experience life itself. Letting go, detachment from material and emotional cravings. To understand true happiness, we must first understand one of the most important concepts in Buddhism, detachment. Detachment isn't about not caring for anything. It's not about abandoning love, family, or even passions in life. It's about learning not to cling too tightly to anything, whether it's people, objects, or even our own emotions. In our daily lives, we are constantly attached to things. We get attached to material things, like a new phone, a new car, or even a house. We think that these things will make us happy, but soon, that happiness fades, and we are left wanting more. This is because material things are temporary. The excitement of owning something new wears off, and soon we find ourselves seeking the next thing to fill that gap. But the truth is, no object or possession will ever give us lasting happiness. Think of it like this. Imagine you are holding a glass of water. At first, it's light and easy to carry. But if you hold on to it for a long time, your hand begins to tire, and the glass starts to feel heavier and heavier. The same happens when we hold on to material things too tightly. What might have once been a source of joy can eventually become a burden. This is the essence of attachment. The more we cling to things, the more they weigh us down. But the process of detachment is not about rejecting the world or abandoning everything we care about. It's about finding peace in the understanding that nothing in this world is permanent. The phone, the car, the job, the house, they can all come and go. The people we love can change, or even leave. This is the reality of life. But when we truly understand this, we stop chasing after things to define our happiness. Detachment allows us to experience life more fully. When we let go of the idea that we must always possess or control, we open ourselves up to the joy of simply experiencing life as it is. We stop looking for happiness in external things and start finding it within ourselves. This is where true freedom lies. Now, let's talk about emotional detachment. We all have emotions: anger, fear, jealousy, and sadness. These emotions are a natural part of being human, but when we hold on to them too tightly, they can cause us a great deal of suffering. For example, if you hold on to anger, you may feel angry for days, weeks, or even years. The person you are angry with may not even know or care, but you carry the burden of that anger with you. Emotional detachment doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It means not letting your emotions control you. When you experience anger, for example, notice it, acknowledge it, and then let it go. Don't cling to it. Don't let it define you. The same goes for any other emotion. Recognize that emotions come and go like clouds in the sky. They are not permanent, and they don't need to control your actions or your peace of mind. Buddhism teaches us that the root of suffering is craving. our desire for things, people, or situations to be different than they are. We crave happiness, but we also crave things that bring us temporary pleasure. These cravings keep us stuck in a cycle of desire, dissatisfaction, and suffering. But when we learn to let go of these cravings, we stop chasing after fleeting pleasures and start focusing on cultivating inner peace. So, how do we practice detachment? It starts with awareness. When you feel attached to something or someone, pause and observe your feelings. Are you holding on too tightly? Are you expecting that object, person, or situation to bring you lasting happiness? Recognizing the attachment is the first step toward letting it go. Once you are aware of your attachment, you can start to release it. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice. But with time, you'll begin to feel lighter, more at peace, and more content with what you already have. Detachment also teaches us to embrace change. Change is inevitable, and when we resist it, we create suffering for ourselves. We cling to the way things are, and when they change, we feel upset or fearful. But when we accept that change is a natural part of life, we can let go of our resistance and flow with the changes. We learn to adapt, to embrace the new, and to trust that whatever comes will bring new opportunities for growth and happiness. One powerful way to practice detachment is through mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us stay present in the moment without being attached to the past or the future. When we are mindful, we let go of regrets about what happened yesterday and worries about what may happen tomorrow. We learn to enjoy the present, knowing that it is all we truly have. With mindfulness, we can experience joy in simple things, like a warm cup of tea, the sound of birds singing, or the feel of the sun on our skin. Letting go is not just about material things or emotions. It also extends to our thoughts. Often, we get attached to our thoughts, believing that they define us or are the truth of who we are. But thoughts are just thoughts. They are fleeting and ever-changing, just like the weather. When we stop attaching ourselves to our thoughts, we stop identifying with them. We stop letting them control our behavior and our emotions. Another important part of detachment is understanding the impermanence of life. Buddhism teaches that everything is temporary. Our lives, our relationships, our experiences, and even the things we love. This doesn't mean we shouldn't enjoy life or appreciate what we have. It means that we should not cling to them too tightly. Everything is in constant motion, and when we understand this, we can enjoy life without fear of losing it. Finally, detachment helps us understand that happiness does not come from external things or circumstances. True happiness comes from within. When we let go of our attachments, we free ourselves from the need for validation, recognition, or material success. We no longer tie our happiness to external conditions. We find peace and contentment in the present moment, just as it is. The practice of detachment is a journey. It's not about perfection but about progress. Each step we take toward letting go brings us closer to true freedom and happiness. And with that freedom, we can face the challenges of life with grace, knowing that we don't need to hold on to anything to be happy. Detachment, when practiced with wisdom and compassion, is not about cold indifference. It's about living fully, without being shackled by attachments. It's about experiencing life's beauty and joy without clinging to it for the sake of happiness. It's about learning that happiness is not something we find outside of ourselves, but something we cultivate from within. Let go, and you'll find that the more you release, the more room you create for true peace, joy, and freedom in your life. Karma and its influence on our pursuit of happiness. In our search for happiness, one of the most powerful and often misunderstood concepts is karma. Karma is not some mysterious force that decides your fate based on your past life, as many people might think. Instead, it's about understanding the connection between our actions, our intentions, and the outcomes we experience. Simply put, karma means action, and every action, whether good or bad, creates an effect in our lives. Think of it like planting seeds in a garden. If you plant good seeds, kindness, love, patience, then over time, you will grow beautiful flowers. If you plant bad seeds, anger, greed, hatred, then your garden will produce weeds that can hurt you and others. In the same way, the things we do and the thoughts we have shape our future experiences. Now, you might be wondering, how does this relate to happiness? Well, Our actions create the conditions for happiness or suffering in our lives. When we act with good intentions and do good things, we create a foundation for positive experiences. This doesn't mean that life will always be easy or perfect, but it means that we are aligning ourselves with forces that bring peace, joy, and fulfillment. However, if we act out of anger, selfishness, or ignorance, we may unknowingly invite negativity and suffering into our lives. This doesn't mean that everything bad that happens to us is a result of bad karma. Life is not that simple, but it does mean that we have some control over how we respond to life's challenges. Our actions and intentions matter, and over time, they shape the course of our lives. Let's consider a simple example. Imagine you're at work, and a colleague does something that frustrates you. If you react angrily, you might hurt that person's feelings, create tension, and make the situation worse. This is a form of negative karma. However, if you respond with understanding, patience, or even just a calm attitude, you create a different energy around the situation. You may not change your colleague's behavior, but you will feel more peaceful and avoid unnecessary conflict. Karma is not a punishment or reward system, but a natural law of cause and effect. It's about the energy we put out into the world. If we want to experience happiness, we need to create positive energy by doing good things and cultivating good thoughts. But this doesn't mean we have to be perfect or always behave in a certain way. It simply means that we need to be aware of our actions and their effects. One of the most important things to understand about karma is that it's not just about our outward actions. It's also about our inner intentions. In Buddhism, it is said that intentions are the seed of karma. For example, if you do something kind for someone but do it with the intention of getting something in return, that's not true generosity. It's an act of self-interest. On the other hand, if you act with pure intention, without expecting anything back, then your karma is truly positive. Karma is also deeply connected to the concept of mindfulness. When we practice mindfulness, we become aware of our thoughts, words, and actions. We can start to notice when we're acting out of selfishness, fear, or anger, and choose to make different decisions. Mindfulness gives us the ability to break the cycle of harmful karma and create new, positive patterns. At the same time, karma is not something that happens instantly. Just like seeds take time to grow into plants, the effects of our actions may take time to show up. Sometimes, we may do something good, and it feels like nothing changes. Other times, we may do something negative, and it seems like the consequences don't come right away. But this is where patience comes in. We trust the process and know that, eventually, the good we do will come back to us. In Buddhism, there is also the idea of accumulating good karma over time. Just as a river becomes full with each drop of water, our actions accumulate and shape our destiny. The more good we put into the world, the more positive energy we invite into our own lives. And the more we work on our inner selves, by letting go of negative emotions, practicing kindness, and cultivating wisdom, the more happiness we create for ourselves and others. Karma also teaches us about responsibility. No one can change the past, but we can always change the future by the actions we take today. If we're unhappy with where we are in life, we have the power to create a new path. We don't have to be stuck in the patterns of our past. Through mindful action, we can transform ourselves and our circumstances. Now, let's take a moment to think about how karma influences our relationships. In every relationship, whether it's with family, friends, or colleagues, we are constantly exchanging energy. When we treat others with kindness and respect, we are creating positive karma not only for ourselves, but for those around us. Positive relationships are the result of positive actions, and as we nurture others, we open the door for happiness and love to flow back to us. However, if we treat others harshly or with indifference, we create negative karma that can affect not only our relationship with that person, but also our own sense of peace. Remember, what we give out is often what we get back. So, if we want happiness, we must first spread happiness in our actions. But there's also a very important point to remember. Karma is not about expecting something in return for our good actions. True kindness and generosity come without any strings attached. If you help someone just to receive something in return, you're not fully living in harmony with the true spirit of karma. When you give with a pure heart, without any desire for reward, that's when you create the most powerful, positive karma. Finally, karma teaches us that we are the creators of our own happiness. It's easy to blame the world or other people for our unhappiness, but in truth, it's our actions and reactions that shape our experiences. By making conscious choices and acting with wisdom, we can create a life full of joy and peace. It's not always easy, but it is always possible. So, the next time you find yourself unhappy or frustrated, ask yourself, what actions have I taken to create this situation? And then ask, what can I do now to create a positive change? Remember, your happiness is in your hands. Through the wisdom of karma, you can transform your life and experience the deep joy that comes from living in alignment with the natural laws of the universe. The journey to lasting happiness. We have reached the end of this journey together, haven't we? But, in truth, this is only the beginning. As we part ways today, let me leave you with wisdom that you can carry in your heart, a simple yet profound way to find lasting happiness in every moment of life. You might ask, is it really possible to stay happy forever? It's a question many of us ask because we've been taught to see happiness as something fleeting, like a guest who visits and then leaves. But Buddhism teaches us that happiness isn't a visitor. It's a state of mind, something that can be cultivated and sustained if we choose to walk the right path. So, let's look back at what we've learned together. We began with understanding suffering, the ups and downs that life inevitably brings. We spoke of impermanence, the truth that nothing in this world stays the same. We explore the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, and how mindfulness can transform our lives. All of this brings us here, to this final step, tying it all together and living it fully. Let me share a story with you. Once, a student came to a Zen master and asked, "Master, how can I find happiness that lasts?" The master handed him a cup and began pouring tea into it. The cup filled to the brim, but the master kept pouring until the tea overflowed. The student cried out, "Stop! The cup is already full." The master smiled and said, "Exactly. You cannot fill a cup that is already full. To find happiness, first, empty yourself of your worries, attachments, and expectations. Only then will there be space for peace and joy to enter." This is the secret, my friends. We must learn to let go. Let go of the need to control everything, the need to be perfect, and the constant chase for more. True happiness is not found in holding on, but in releasing. Now, I ask you to reflect. How much of your unhappiness comes from clinging to things? Whether it's possessions, people, or even past mistakes. Imagine the freedom of loosening that grip. Doesn't it feel lighter already? But letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means embracing life as it is. When we stop fighting against reality, we begin to see the beauty in it. A rainy day becomes a symphony of nature. A difficult moment becomes a lesson in strength. Every breath becomes a reminder that we are alive, and that in itself is a miracle. Meditation, mindfulness, and compassion. These are the tools that can guide you. Meditation teaches you to quiet your mind and find clarity. Mindfulness helps you stay present, appreciating life one moment at a time. Compassion connects you to others, showing you that shared kindness multiplies happiness. And now, as we close this chapter, let me remind you of one final truth. Happiness is not a destination. It's not something you'll find when you have enough money, success, or approval. It's not out there. It's in here, in your heart, your mind, your soul. The world will continue to change. Challenges will come and go. People will hurt you, and life won't always go as planned. But through it all, you have the power to stay calm, stay kind, and stay happy. You have the choice to see life as a gift, even in its imperfection. So, where do you go from here? Start small. Take one thing you've learned today and apply it. Maybe it's practicing gratitude each morning. Maybe it's meditating for 5 minutes. Maybe it's forgiving someone or yourself. Remember, the journey to lasting happiness begins with one step, and every step matters. Before we part, let me ask you for one favor. There are thousands of you who've watched this video, yet only 0.2% have subscribed. If this journey has inspired you, if it has brought even a flicker of peace to your heart, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom Woven. Your support helps us share this wisdom with more souls who need it. And now, I leave you with this. Be kind to yourself and others. Trust in the path you're walking. And know that happiness is not something you find. It's something you create, moment by moment. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May your days be filled with peace, love, and the gentle joy that comes from within. Until we meet again, stay mindful, stay compassionate, and stay happy.